Okay, so the Emerald City briefing is meant to provide us with an example of how unified command would come into play in a real emergency. So the scenario is basically that Emerald City has been having a flood problem. So for the past week, it's been raining over an inch every day, and people are worried that they might need to evacuate their homes. So we have to create an emergency plan so that everyone is on the same page and knows what to expect so that we can keep everyone safe. The good news with this is that we have a lot of resources at our disposal. So this is really where the unified command is going to come into play because we have all these different agencies involved. We have our first responders, the fire and police departments, transportation facilities, local resources, and nonprofits that might be involved as well. So it's really important that tasks are delegated so that the people in charge of each of those agencies don't have too much on their plate and don't get too overwhelmed. We want everything to be well organized because efficiency is a really important thing with emergencies where public safety is an issue because we really just want to keep everyone safe. So the first thing of our resources is going to be the first responders. We have 4 fire stations in the area that we could make use of, and one of them has a dive team. So those are going to be probably the people who are rescuing anyone who might be rescuing. So if people have gotten trapped in their homes or their cars, or if the flooding gets so bad that people are standing on their roofs trying to be evacuated out of there, we might need to send in dive teams to go rescue them. Hopefully it wouldn't come to that, but it's definitely something to be thinking about, especially in areas of like low sea level where they're more at risk for a lot of flooding. Another thing is transportation. So we have to have programmable road signs in order to halt traffic as necessary. Some roads that are, again, like low areas might need to be blocked off. If there's extensive flooding or debris, then you don't want people going down those roads and getting trapped. So we have to kind of control the traffic as needed. So maybe even having people down on the field or just having a lot of road signs and the electronic ones that we can program will be really helpful with that. We want to avoid letting people get trapped as much as possible. So if people are driving around or trying to evacuate, we want to keep that in mind. We also have 8 dump trucks, 2 backhoes, an excavator, and 2 bulldozers. So we may need to use some of these as tools for debris removal in areas that are really blocked off or in like specific rescue missions where people may have gotten trapped somewhere. We also have 2 ambulances and 4 paramedics, so those might be necessary if people are trapped or if people have gotten injured trying to get out of their houses and may need medical attention. So we want to be able to get people to the paramedics or vice versa quickly so that everyone can be treated as needed. The last thing is local resources. So that's things like Red Cross and Salvation Army. Those may come into play if we do have to evacuate. So we can't tell people that they need to evacuate unless we're going to have somewhere for them to go. So hopefully Red Cross could provide a place for sheltering, and maybe some of these NGOs could be used to provide food and water and other necessary resources, maybe just batteries and radios, stuff like that, for people who can't get to a store. We would hope that stores are open because that'd be a lot easier, but they may be really flooded or blocked off, and people will probably need to have some basic food items if they're stuck in their houses for too long. These resources are all going to come into play when addressing the 6 critical issues. The first one is warning and evacuation. This might involve bringing in news reporters or media sources to get information out because we want to make sure everyone is updated on what's going on. And if we do decide to evacuate, people need to know when that's happening. We could also do this through text updates, similar to how FSU does those like severe thunderstorm warning things or the little updates that they send out. Another thing to keep in mind here is to make sure that our power lines and telephone lines are back up if they ever go out. So that's definitely something that we should be concentrating on in the first 72 hours. Like the areas that are affected the most, we want to be making sure that those things are getting back together so that we can communicate with them. Because communication is just going to be a really important key concept. Another critical issue is the sheltering that I talked about before. So we have to have somewhere for people to go in the case of an evacuation. It's important to have resources like Red Cross that can provide facilities for people to go to, or maybe local schools with large gyms, something like that, whatever our designated area is. The next issue is monitoring critical infrastructure. So, a critical facility is any structure that, if it gets damaged or destroyed, could have the potential to cause serious harm or extensive property damage, or would really disrupt the socio-economic activities of that community. So it could be stuff like schools, nursing homes, hospitals, and of course, fire, police, and EMS, or any facilities or factories that have hazardous waste materials. So we really don't want that flood damage to lead to a hazmat issue as well. If there's too much debris or flooding, we don't want to have any spills. So we need to be monitoring those areas in particular. The next issue is providing clean water and food when that's needed. So obviously it's a lot more efficient if we can let people go to the public sector facilities like Publix and then Dixie for food shopping. But if grocery stores get too flooded or blocked off, like I said, then we might need to have some alternative methods for that. So that's where maybe Salvation Army or Red Cross could put up some stations to provide resources to the people who need them and are able to get around. And the last issue is ensuring the safety of everyone there. So that's the responders, media personnel, and of course citizens. Safety should always be our top priority. So that's really what our main goal is. I think that's everything for me. So now Michael's going to talk about Unified Command a little bit more.
Great, thank you very much. Can everybody see my screen okay? Okay, great. Just pulling it up here, one moment. My name is Michael, and I'm going to talk to you about subjects and concepts of the Unified Command. Unified Command is very similar to the Incident Command System. And the Incident Command System is in the top right. It's this pink and black diagram. It says Incident Commander, Public Information Officer, a couple others, and then the FLOP acronym, which stands for Finance and Administration, Logistics, Operations, and Planning. The thing is that the Unified Command is a much more broad and higher level version of the Incident Command System. Basically what it does is it aggregates multiple incident command systems or agencies across jurisdictions, across a broad level of operations. And there's two types. There can be multi-agency and multi-jurisdictional. So you've got multiple agencies across a large geographic area. Or type 2, multiple agencies, but in a single jurisdiction. And in this case, with the Emerald City flood, we're looking at a type 2. So it's a single jurisdiction with multiple agencies, which in general is a bit simpler than if you had multiple agencies across multiple jurisdictions. And ultimately, what the Unified Command does is it creates an overarching management team that manages the subdivisions, and those subdivisions being the different incident command systems or the different agencies that are managing this incident. Ideally, the Unified Command is comprised of the incident commanders or qualified personnel of the highest level from different agencies or different incident command systems. And within Unified Command, and really any point of emergency management, we have unity of command. So everybody has one supervisor. There's a certain span of control, which psychologically tends to be around 7 people. Once you pass a team of 7, you're really pushing the boundaries of management and how effective it can be. And everyone really stays in their lanes. So an example of this would be that firefighters aren't going to tell police officers how to lock down a scene and evacuate people. And similarly, EMS crews are not going to tell firefighters how to put out a fire. We have specific lanes of expertise in which these different functions maintain their duties and responsibilities. So under the original incident command system diagram, I've created my own, and this is a very, very simplified but high overview look at what Unified Command is. So if you look at the top diagram, the original incident command system, boil that down into one of the colored boxes under Unified Command. Each one of these colored boxes, whether it be blue, red, purple, orange, is its own incident command system. And if you have many of those, and they're spread out in a random area because they could be in different areas or accomplishing different goals, they all report to a unified command. And again, this unified command is made up of the most qualified, involved personnel from each of these incident command systems or agencies. Unified command uses a couple different key resources, the first of which is an incident action plan, also known as IAP. And this is a comprehensive plan agreed upon, and that's a key word here. It's agreed upon by the unified command. Not just one person comes up with it, but multiple people do. And all incident command systems below the unified command or the agencies need to follow this incident action plan. That's critical. We all have to be on the same page. And it needs to be done as soon as you have two or more incident command systems, again, under that unified command umbrella, or multiple agencies. So as soon as the incident gets to the point at which you need additional resources outside your command system or your agency, you need to have an incident action plan to make sure that the different compartments, I guess you could say, are working seamlessly together on the same page. The incident action plan is created by the planning section and is executed in a tactical nature by the operations section. And then there's the incident command post. This is literally a physical central location, and it's often very basic. It could be as technological as an EOC, an emergency operations center, but it could be as simple as a tent with a few tables. And the crucial part about it is that all activities and meetings occur there. If I need to speak with Scott or with Brooke, I don't need to call them up and rely on internet or cellular technology. I can go right to where they're at and speak with them and get something done. So physical accessibility is key. That being said, if the resources are available, communication equipment and technology, much to like Brooke said a few minutes ago, is paramount. Communication can be the shortfall of any error or hiccup that happens. So it's necessary to have in the incident command post. And then you have what's called the planning P. So the planning P is a cycle of decision-making processes that happen. And it's much like, as Rob talked about earlier on in our class meeting here, it's like a pinwheel. So there's many different functions that spread out from the pinwheel. And as the decision-making process occurs, this pinwheel spins. So as the decision process is going on, a new operational period will begin and end every once in a while when goals are accomplished. And as this operational period spins with the pinwheel, the operational section chief may change depending on what the activities are that are at hand. So if it's a law enforcement activity, it could be police officers or sworn personnel. If it's search and rescue, it could be fire. If it's saving lives, it could be EMS. And that's going to change as the pinwheel spins or as this planning P process occurs. If you look at the bottom of the P, the base of it, there is a red star that signifies the occurrence of the original event. And then on the right there, the operational period, that's when the operational period begins and the previous one ends when goals are accomplished. So specific to our scenario here, we have a unified command structure that has 5 key areas. We have law enforcement, transportation, fire, EMS, and local resources. So law enforcement, although it has 2 key sections of the state police and the sheriff's office, this is really a local incident, and sheriff's office being county-wide tends to handle these sorts of things. So we would have the chief of staff or the commanding officer from the sheriff's office handle the law enforcement abilities or activities rather at the unified command level. For transportation, the highest ranking person it seems that's listed in this scenario is a road supervisor, but that's not quite at the executive level that we're looking for unified command. So we would have someone of higher administrative authority and rank, perhaps a director of transportation, to fill this role in the unified command. For fire, as Brooke talked about earlier, there's multiple stations involved. It's not just one. We have multiple trucks, multiple teams. So really in the unified command, you wouldn't have the station chief, but the district or regional chief. For EMS, we have just one rescue squad, as it looks like from what we've been provided. So the rescue squad commander would be the point of contact or the decision maker as far as that position goes in the unified command. And then local resources, American Red Cross is a heavy hitter as far as nonprofit services go, and that person in the Unified Command would probably be the disaster program manager. Underneath this main portion of the Unified Command, you have a safety officer, public information officer, and liaison officer. Well, a safety officer, just based on its nature, would probably be a law enforcement official. And although it wouldn't be as high ranking as, let's say, a chief of staff or the commanding officer, it could be a mid-level law enforcement officer that has some experience and probably isn't a rookie to start out. The public information officer, as we talked about earlier, and on the advice of Rob, this is a highly specialized position that requires expertise on the knowledge and what type of information is appropriate to disclose at what time. So in regards to fire, someone from EMS might not know what's appropriate to talk about and how to talk about it, and vice versa for other different positions. So similar to how the Unified Command is a pinwheel overall, the public information officer is a pinwheel as well, and different PIOs from different subsections of the Unified Command could serve this purpose depending on the situation. The liaison officer, well, that could really be anybody. It's someone that communicates well, has networking connections, and could easily speak with different people from different sections of the Unified Command, or perhaps even go beyond the Unified Command structure to talk with agencies outside the incident. And then below that, you have your classic FLOP acronym: Finance, Logistics, Operations, and Planning. The key thing to note here is the operations section. Although there's not one section that's most important, the operations is more salient than the rest. It should be from the most involved agency or incident command system of the rest in this situation. It has to have authority to move resources, to execute them and distribute them to different personnel and people, because it has to be able to operationalize, whereas someone who doesn't have authority won't actually be able to do that. And it changes, as I said before, with this planning P. As the P rotates, as the pinwheel rotates, the operations section chief will change as well. Next, I'm going to pass it on to Parker here, and he's going to talk about issues and development of the incident command structure, or the Unified Command structure. Thank you.
All right. So my name is Parker, and I will be going over the issues facing the development for the Unified Command structure. So to begin with, everybody is always going to have their own way of how they think or believe these situations should be done, especially before actually going into these situations. Many have this perspective that they think they know how it should be done. But one of the main issues is the Unified Command structure is made up of joint decisions, which make it very difficult to come to a conclusion. It's a lot easier to make a decision with a single voice. And in many of these situations, it's agencies from all over that are just coming together to say what they believe the best idea may be. Another serious problem is the incidents are divided geographically or functionally, so that each jurisdiction or agency can establish its own ICS organization. So with that being said, instead of having one big organization, it's multiple organizations all over from the ICS perspective. Some organizations have more money and resources than others, so there's not as much suffering. The major problem with that being said is whenever a disaster takes place, they need to get the majority of the money and resources to the area that was affected most and that was hit the hardest. So multi-agency approach makes all the agencies collide with different ways to deal with the issue. The issue is basically figuring out what the best way is to take care of these situations regarding different agencies and bringing together all of the different methods that they have trained with. So another major issue with the Unified Command structure is that individuals designated by their jurisdictional authorities must jointly determine the end goal while maximizing the use of assigned resources. The Unified Command structure has issues as a whole because it is all about teamwork. and they're not planning and training together or conducting exercises together when being brought in from all around the country from different agencies. They're all brought together and meet up for the first time instead of meeting beforehand to train occasionally. They each have their own specialty. They're not equally trained for specific situations. They train in the region or terrain or part that they live in because it's more convenient for them. A single incident command post allows the unified command to maintain a coordinated effort. One issue is having multiple shared facilities when there should be one. So whenever there's an issue, instead of having one facility they all meet up and talk at, there's usually multiple facilities spread all over the place, which leaves people very confused. They're not all on the same page. The command meetings are not being set up well or taken seriously. And ways they can set these meetings up more correctly. So a few requirements for the command meeting should include the command meeting should include only agency incident commanders, people that are highest up, that do this frequently instead of people that are just signed up and have a certificate that are helping out. The meeting should be brief and important points should be documented. Prior to the meeting, the respective responsible officials should have reviewed the purposes and agenda items and be prepared to discuss them. And a few strategies and scenarios to fix these situations could be these agencies must meet with all the other agencies before being certified instead of taking an exam or being certified online. They must have agencies specifically trained for each disaster instead of sending people from all kinds of studies and disaster training to each specific disaster. Have individuals trained for specific regions and more trained for things that are more likely to happen wherever they're living so they can help more efficiently. Make sure the agencies know who will be taking care of the disaster or the situation, as in having designated areas for each agency in the unified command. And the establishment of command and control starts with developing specific plans and policies ahead of time, ensuing clarity in roles and responsibilities, and planning for complex commands throughout the affected region. This is how it should be done. While it is not easy, everybody's going to have their own view. To facilitate a way to fix the problem of who is in command, to facilitate the transfer of command when a new disaster takes place, the target city document should be in place before the disaster takes place in advance. If there's an IND attack, people should know who is going to be in command. It should be written down, documented, and there shouldn't be an issue of wondering who's in command. All right, now I'm going to pass it on to Scott